Welcome to First Builders, the podcast for those who shape companies from the ground up. I'm Amber Illig, founder and general partner at the Council Capital, where we invest in early teams solving critical problems in essential industries.
And I'm Rachel Choi, partner at the Council. This show is about the people behind the playbooks, the ones who take a leap early and help define what their companies would become before anyone else could see it.
Today's guest is one of the few founders tackling a space that's rarely discussed but deeply important: how to maximize equity value through smart ownership structures.
And before founding Dynasty, Alessandro spent 8 years at Carta, helping companies and investors manage cap tables, valuations, and equity. He started as Carta's first sales hire in 2014 and became VP of sales, driving company revenue from zero to over $300 million. Even though Carta is still private today, early employees have had some opportunities to cash out their equity.
Alessandro's experience at Carta not only gave him a front row seat to how successful companies are built, but also to how ownership gets structured and how that can impact founders and early employees when there's a liquidity event. Now, with Dynasty, he's helping founders and investors leverage QSBS stacking, which is a tax strategy that can significantly increase how much value they keep from their equity.
Alessandro, welcome to First Builders.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, super excited. Well, let's dive in. Would love to start with your time at Carta. You started in sales there. So what did working inside a fast scaling fintech tell you about ownership and equity strategy?
I learned a lot. One thing that was very clear to me in the very beginning was the most successful, the repeat founders that were working on their second companies, they always created a bunch of trust. And in the very beginning, that was literally what we were all doing. We were all helping our sales we got. We had to all pitch in. Salespeople were also onboarding companies. So I did probably a couple hundred onboardings myself, and seeing trust, especially with the repeat founders, was definitely the eye-opening moment for me when it came to structuring equity and with what the most successful people did.
Yeah, no, that's really fascinating to me. So hearing, and if I hear this correctly, like the sales folks, like including yourself, would kind of be like the customer success onboarding, folks as well. So interesting that was the case for you guys, but probably a great way to ensure that you really establish that trust with your customers and with those founders.
Yeah, and it got crazy. There was one month, it was probably December 2015, where we had to shut down. We had way too many customers. It was a very good thing, but we signed up so many customers that we had this huge, massive onboarding backlog, and we literally shut down sales for the entire month. And I had a sales team of like 15 or 20 at that point, and we all were doing onboardings. Yeah, it was a fun experience. We were still selling. We were just pre-selling for January. We were post, deals.
Wow, that's an incredible problem to have. Was there a moment where you thought, like, wow, just seeing the disconnect between like first-time founders and second-time founders, we see that in other areas where like second-time founders just know how to leapfrog certain issues. And even we believe first builders that have been early inside of companies know how to leapfrog certain issues and get ahead faster. But related to that insight that you had about the trusts, was there a moment when you thought, wow, these first-time founders kind of have no idea what they're missing out for? I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, something specific, not related to trust, kind of related, but just QSBS in general. It was 2014, and we hired an PwC tax accountant on our onboarding team, actually. And that individual was really early career, like 23, 24 years old. And he was explaining to us in a like town hall company meeting, and we were like, 15, 20 employees. He was explaining to us what QSBS was. And some of the senior leaders in the company, including our CEO, Henry, and our general counsel, that was the most surprising one of all, but our general counsel, who came from Cooley, were basically saying, oh, no, that sounds too good to be true. Don't believe him about QSBS. And they were telling us not to exercise because the company was risky. They didn't want us to it was coming out of a good spot of not wanting us to take the risk of exercising our shares. But some of the employees took that advice of not exercising, didn't exercise. By the time they did, we raised too much money and they weren't able to take advantage of QSBS. You have to exercise your shares before the company, the old rules, before the company has $50 million on its balance sheet. And so we ended up raising a big fundraising round for our Series C. And you know how it is. By the time the rank and file employees learn about the fundraise, there's already a term sheet. It's too late.
Yeah.
They can't exercise.
It's already in the news, basically.
They missed it, and they didn't even know that QSBS was a real thing at that point either. And on the other hand, I believed the PwC count, regardless of what our CEO and general counsel said. I said, you know what, I'm going to exercise. And I was a little bit later in my career than some of the other employees, so I had the means of being able to exercise. I think that's one of the things that makes it difficult for early employees is if they
Totally.
can't, and usually it's cheap, but there's still a cost associated with it in the beginning. And so I exercised and I got to take advantage of QSPS, at least for one exemption. And so just seeing that, like, that's the type of thing that our CEO, Henry, if he ever starts another company again, I guarantee you he's going to tell everybody about QSPS. Second time founder, like knows what it is, going to educate the employees, tell them, hey, if you believe in this company, you should actually exercise your stock because it's going to help you benefit from qualified small business stock treatment. So, it's important if you believe in the company to exercise. And it's also important at the company level to make sure that employees can early exercise their options. In order to be able to early exercise their options, there needs to be a specific clause in the company formation documents that allows them to early exercise. And not all companies allow that. And they don't even know, like when you form your company, like our
Yeah.
law firm didn't really go over they're just like, here's our standard documents. And we
Right.
had to ask them like,
Yeah.
hey, we want to be able to early exercise because otherwise employees can't start the clock, the 5-year clock for QSBS. If they can't exercise, they have to wait till the shares vest. And there's other tax implications with not being able to exercise early because the best time to exercise is right away when you get the shares because there's no actual gain at that moment in time. So when you exercise, there's going to be no alternative minimum tax as due because it's even. You got the shares at the price that the company is valued at today, so it's a wash. Versus if you wait to 12, 24, 36 months, now you exercise, now you have this huge gain that's going to be reflected in alternative minimum tax. You're going to end up having paid a ton of taxes just to exercise your shares.
Yeah. But you have to have a lot of trust, right? Like that the company is going to do
Yeah.
well and
Yeah.
then, to make that decision. And it sounds like you had that. I was curious, like what made you, have that intuition about it? What made you stay at Carta also like for so long as well?
Henry convinced me on my initial interview, not immediately at the interview, but when I went home and I reflected on it, and it was a very interesting interview. The first time I met him, he was like barefoot and he like was whiteboarding and he was like, here's the stock market that exists today in the public markets. Here's all the infrastructure that exists in the private markets. And it was like law firms, spreadsheets. And he's like, we're going to recreate the entire stock market, but for private companies. And I had some experience in the private cap table space. I worked for the incumbent. And so I was like, no, that's not possible. That's against the law. Has to be paper. I debated him and I'm the natural debater as a salesperson. So I'm like arguing with him. And then I went home and I thought about it. And I was actually talking to a friend of mine about the interview. And I started like taking Henry's side and I was debating. I was like, here's what Henry was saying and here's what he thinks. And in that discussion with my friend's like, well, sounds like you should just join then. And I was like, because I'd made such a compelling case for what Henry was saying. And so then I reached back out to Henry and I said, hey, I know I argued with you in the interview and I didn't think it was possible. I said, but now I believe. And I just was completely at that moment, like I believed in the mission of the company. And so, I told him I probably gave up a little too much leverage. I said, I'll join, and that was before he made me an offer. So he ended up making me the lowest offer ever. And, I joined anyways, but it all worked out.
That's really interesting. Yeah, we talk actually one of the top 3 things we look for in founders in the first conversation is do they have a huge vision for what they're building and not just where they want to exit the company and the numbers, but more like do they see the world in a different way with their product in it? And it's funny because it's almost like bordering on delusion. You have to really sort out like who's delusional versus who has a real vision that could come to life. So I love
Yeah.
that you saw Henry, he's like, just as close to that edge as you want to be able to build something big. So that's super cool.
Reality distortion. That's what they call it, right? It's
Yes.
the Steve Jobs thing. Henry made us read a book called Presentation Secrets by Steve Jobs, and it talked a lot about that.
That's awesome. And now today you've decided to found your own company after that 8-year run at Carta. So first of all, congrats on the run. It's insane to go from 0 to 300 million ARR at any company, anywhere, especially joining from the early days. So that's awesome. But what made you leave and even want to leave and start a company?
Honestly, like I come from an immigrant family. I would have never started a venture funded startup. I probably would have been a small business owner, but not a venture funded startup with the risk connected to it. I would have never done it unless it was the perfect situation, which is I made enough money at Carta. I have my nest egg. I was able to buy a couple houses and I had perfect co-founders. My one of my good friends that I had worked with for over a decade, who was our first product manager hire at Carta. He always wanted to start a company. So me and him were always talking about it. And then I became really good friends with employee number one at Carta, the engineer that built the platform. And so we kind of talked about it together a lot. We have sales, product, and engineering. We're a perfect fit to start a company. We can do a lot by ourselves. And so the stars aligned, like everything kind of came together, including the idea. The idea for Dynasty came to me from one of the smartest people I know. He was running our strategy team at Carta at the time. He's a Stanford guy, super well connected. He has his own startup now, but he put together this like memo on Dynasty, and he's like presented it to me because I was the go-to-market person for the company. I was running sales and finding product market fit for all the new businesses. And he was like, Al, this is what Carter should do next. And he had it all documented. And that to me was the light bulb moment of like, yeah, this should exist. It wasn't until later when I was like, okay, maybe we'll start a company. And I was chatting with that individual again. And I reminded him of his idea that nobody ever did. And he's like, yeah, you should start it. I'll invest right now. And that's what kicked off the
Wow.
company. So it was the perfect
Wow.
situation.
That's like you had the friction removed. It was like you had the nest egg. You had the
Yeah.
person saying, I want to be your first investor. Here's the idea. Here are the people.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. And for our listeners out there, can you tell us a little about the core problem that Dynasty is solving today?
Yeah. So, we saw this, with the richest people were creating trusts and optimizing taxes and everybody else wasn't. And that's the core problem is like the richest people have access to the best tools that allow them to gain advantages and the rest of us don't. And that's like the core problem. But, the more we drilled into, because trusts are like, there's a lot of companies kind of tackling the trusted will space already. There's Trust and Will, there's Rocket Lawyer, there's LegalZoom, there's probably a dozen other brand new startups that are all tackling the trust and will space. But the deeper we dug into it, the more we realized that the biggest area that needs to be democratized is not the regular trust, but the complex trusts. And the Nevada Trust, for example, or the Wyoming or Delaware Trust, the South Dakota Trust. There's like a handful of states that have the best laws in the United States for trusts. And so we kind of drilled into that and we're like, we want to open this up for anyone, not just the regular trust that your parents may have, but the trust that the billionaires use. And that was the trust that allowed for, QSPS stacking. When we saw it, like those were the trusts that were being used. They weren't the regular trust. They were the irrevocable South Dakota or Nevada trusts. And so the more we learned about this kind of hidden world of trusts, and there's a whole bunch of like content on the internet about like South Dakota Trust and Nevada Trust. And like, that's where all the billionaires keep their money. It's like the new Switzerland. And it's not only for people in the United States, but for people offshore as well. They're moving money to South Dakota. They're moving money to Nevada. The more we learned about that, like why? Well, it's because of taxes. It's also because of asset protection. It's also because of privacy. Like everybody should be able to use these. Like maybe the taxes only the richest people can benefit from or the startup founders, but the asset protection, anybody should be able to benefit from that. If my life savings is $50,000, why can't I protect that from lawsuits, divorce, whatever? Like, why can't I protect it in an asset protection trust the same way that Elon Musk can protect his assets? Why can't I do the same thing? And so that, we started seeing that, and our investors are very focused on us being a mass market company, not a boutique go after the top 1% company. We want to be a mass market company, but we actually had to become a licensed Nevada trust company. We decided on Nevada. Nevada was the state that we wanted to offer trusts in. And in order to offer a Nevada trust, you need a Nevada trustee. And so we had to become a licensed Nevada trust company. Took a couple years, cost a couple $1 million. We just got our license a few months ago. And so we have this big, bold mission of bringing Nevada trust services to the masses. We had to go take a couple steps back and figure out, okay, well, what's the first market we want to capture? And it wasn't, again, I won't take any credit for it at all. It was our investors, one of our investors specifically, who said, get as narrow as you can, find a market that has a viral network effect. And they're like, you know what? It's startup founders. It's QSPS Trust, which is kind of the reason why we started this to begin with. And it's the market that we know. It's the go-to-market that we know. It's the network that we have. It's viral. You sign on one founder, they introduce you to two more co-founders, and they introduce you to their friends. And then their investors are asking questions. We know how to do it. So it just made perfect. And it's our own problem as well at this point. So we're like, perfect. So we launched it. So we're starting with founders, but the goal is to expand. kind of go after and capture this first market and then expand it inch by inch into the masses. So from founders to executives at startups to general partners at venture firms to limited partners at venture firms and to small business owners, to the masses, and getting all the way to the homeowner. Like that's the big mass market opportunity.
That's so cool. And I love your focus on the mass market, like building something for the 99%, not just the top 1%. I feel like there's been so much discourse for years, but even heating up recently around billionaires. And everybody's almost asked, like, pick a side. Do you love them or do you hate them? Personally, I like some, I dislike others. I think they're all humans who can kind of choose the impact they want to have while they're here. But obviously, one of the main things that they're criticized for is, all these tax breaks and paying less taxes than everybody else. And I liked your take on, I think it was on LinkedIn the other day. You said, like, hey, instead of, us constantly complaining about them, why don't we do something about it and just focus on how do we democratize all these things they're taking advantage of and make sure everybody has access. So I love that you're tackling it. And it seems like you have to chip away at a big block, but even the first chip is like huge, like being able to tackle this QSBS
Oh,
problem.
huge.
So it
By
impacts a lot
itself,
of
it's
people.
like getting every day we're unpeeling more and we're like, we have founders that are selling their companies for hundreds of millions of dollars and they own 70-80% of it and they're putting all into a trust that we're going to be the trustee of. So the opportunity is like huge. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we haven't even, scraped the surface of the market potential.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, like the QSBS stacking is legal, but it's not widely used. Why do you think it's still under the radar today?
First of all, until now, most people didn't even know about QSBS. Like I said, my CEO of Carta didn't know about
True.
QSBS. The
Yes.
general counsel didn't know about QSBS, right? From Cooley. And so, that's like step one. Like people just don't know about it to begin with. Step two is like, if you do know about it, you have to usually talk to a family office to learn about stacking QSBS and then the costs associated with that. The old way of doing it, you'll pay over $100,000 to stack 4 trusts. Plus, you need to do like $10,000 a year in administration costs. So the only founders that could afford that were the successful ones at their either repeat founders or late stage founders. And the problem is at the later stages when the founders can afford it, that's when it's harder to do because you're limited. You can only gift up to $14 million in your lifetime without paying any gift taxes. So the best time to stack trusts is actually day one when your shares are worth 0 because you can stack as much as you want and you can preserve your lifetime exemption. The problem is it's expensive. So that's the problem we're solving, making it possible for founders to do from day one.
It's awesome. And what has some of the first builders type work been like at Dynasty, building things from 0 to 1 and kind of skipping back? It had been 8 years since you'd been in those early days. What has building the product, educating the market, and convincing founders to act early been like?
So hard. So hard. Like I joined Carta as 0 ARR, but Henry already had a lot of stuff done. And I didn't, respect that. I didn't understand that. He always told me like, oh, you have no idea. He was working on it for like 2 or 3 years before I joined,
Wow.
even with 0 ARR, right? Like it just takes time. And he struggled to fundraise and he's talked about it a lot publicly. And so, in the beginning, getting the license was very difficult and expensive, and fundraising until now, it's gotten a little bit easier, but fundraising it's not an easy thing to do. Especially when you're tackling a market that everybody knows is huge, but like building a consumer company, nobody wants to invest in consumer companies. Most of the investors I talk to are like, why don't you go B2B? Why don't you? The challenger is like, no, we're going consumer. We're going to do TikTok videos and Instagram. We did a lot of them. We generated a lot of consumer interest from TikTok videos and Instagram videos, but not a lot of revenue. And so, now going backwards and like, how do we launch this trust company business and generate strong enough revenue to build into this market and support the masses, starting with founders. It's working from a revenue perspective and a viral network perspective. And so it's just picking the right market and getting the license. But like up until this point, we tried a bunch of different markets before we got licensed. We got a lot of one-time revenue, but not a lot of recurring revenue. And just figuring out how to market differently, like especially in today's world where you can't just go and send thousands of emails a day like you used to, or you can't go and buy Facebook ads like you used to. And like now you need to figure out like how to hack growth without spending any money. And so, luckily the founder go to market, like we know it well. So it's a network and, doing exactly what we're doing right now, right? Talking to investors, talking to law firm partners and doing webinars and getting founders, the most important thing, product-led growth. Like create an experience so good that people tell all their friends and family about what they're doing. And the way that you're able to do that best is when you focus on one persona. Before we were more broad, before we got our license and we're like, okay, we're going to help people with their homes. We're going to help people with their brokerage accounts. And like, we make nobody deliriously happy when you do that. If you want to create deliriously happy customers, you have to just focus on one problem and one customer type. And so for us, founders and founder stock, and that's it. And now we're creating deliriously happy customers. Now we have people going on LinkedIn and like posting about us without us asking them to do it because they're
That's
able to get this
amazing.
done in like a day. And it would have taken it for 2% of what it would have costed them otherwise. And so, yeah, that's why it's so important to just focus on one, as narrow of a customer persona as you can.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it sounds like, it was like a hard earned to get to that point, right? Especially when you went from kind of like going to the masses to now this kind of like deep focus on there. So switching gears a little bit, thinking about how you're selling something that's really complex, right? It's compliance heavy. Like you said, you had to get the license. How do you build that kind of trust with the founder quickly?
Yeah.
How does that happen for you
Yeah,
guys?
that's a great question and something that luckily I have a lot of experience doing at Carta. We had the same problem at Carta. I mean, at Carta, what we did was we got an opinion letter from DLA Piper. We paid a bunch of money. They gave an opinion on the validity of our electronic stock certificates. And so that was like, I used that so many. And then I got a case study from Perkins Coie. And so every time founder would doubt what we were doing, or their law firm would tell them that we're illegal because it's conflict of interest, like we were going to cut into their law firm's fees, then I would be like, no, look at this case study from DLA Piper. Look at this or opinion letter from DLA Piper. Look at this case study from Perkins Coie. And I would literally tell them, like, your law firm doesn't want to help you, go to Perkins Coie. They'll help you cut costs by using our software. And so that's what we did at Carta. The equivalent of that at Dynasty, no law firm wants to do an opinion letter on like trust documents, especially because all the law firms that actually know trust documents are competitors to us. And so, or they view us as a competitor. But what we've been able to do is we put together a really good group of partners that we work with that helped us come up with this package, including lawyers, including CPAs, but most importantly, Carta and Morgan Stanley. Morgan Stanley is probably the best one of all. I've had the head of estate planning for Morgan Stanley review our trust documents, review our package and kind of bless it. And I've, have teams at Morgan Stanley that we work hand in hand with now. And when I get a founder who is, wants to make sure we're legitimate, I say, talk to my friends at Morgan Stanley Private Wealth. They only work with people with $100 million plus, but they'll talk to you and they'll talk to you about what we're doing and they'll help you set it up like with us if you want. And obviously they have more interest in managing your money when you sell your company. So I just like, obviously that's why they're willing to talk to you. But having those type of partners to be able to send people to validate us and build credibility, like is key at this stage. In addition to, at this point, we're getting a lot of customer referrals. Somebody signs up, they set it up, and they tell their friends. Like that's the best. That's how you
Yeah.
establish credibility.
Yeah, it's amazing that you've been able to get like those partnerships with like Morgan Stanley. I'm sure when you were trying to at least like land like their first couple founders, right? Like that was probably like a really key component.
Yeah, and it actually wasn't that hard. I spent a lot of time with them now, but the reason why it's easy is because I'm not asking them to send me any customers at all. I'm telling them I'm going to send them customers and they love it. And I send them customers. Yesterday I sent them like three and and the ones that I'm sending them are the ones that are like very successful, like $100 million
Amazing.
plus in assets. And so they love it. They're like, we'll review all your documents. We'll connect you with our CPA partners. We'll help you have the best package possible because they're looking at customer acquisition.
Yeah.
And so they love it. So that's why it's been easy to partner with them is because I'm sending them all the customers. They haven't sent me, I think you've sent me a few, but we're acquiring the customers. So we
Yeah.
control everything.
That's cool. Yeah. And speaking of other learnings, you recently shared a story from your time at Carta that really stuck with me. You wrote about launching a public markets platform, even though Carta was focused on the private markets at that time. They were wanting to kind of try this out in the public markets in 2018, integrating with infrastructure, enabling sell orders, selling to dozens of small public companies, and then kind of getting the chance to land one of the largest IPOs of 2019. So yeah, we wanted to ask a little bit about that.
Good one.
Yeah, and I have the post pulled up. I won't read the whole thing, but there's a couple of lines in there that I felt like really, hit hard, right? Like product was telling me we weren't ready to support them, but I ignored the message. I pushed ahead in selling the deal. The customer trusted me, trusted Carta, and I was selling way too far ahead of the curve. And we ended up dropping the ball. And it ruined our reputation, and my CEOs trusted me, and I'll never make this mistake again. So when product says we aren't ready, we aren't ready.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I love how transparent you are and how candidly you share that story, because it's a brutally honest reflection. And I'm sure a lot of people have stories like that that they're not sharing on LinkedIn. But what made you decide to share it publicly now?
In the day that we're in right now, obviously just trying to get attention online is like, how do you do it? You can brag or you can be vulnerable. And I think not enough people are like truly vulnerable, and just reflecting on like telling stories of where you've learned really hard lessons. And I was trying to think of like what I could talk about, like what's the biggest mistake I've made. And that was the one that I could think of. That was off the top of my head. It was a huge pivotal moment. Like Carta could be supporting public companies right now. Carta should be supporting public companies right now because they have all the pipeline for it, and the amount of IPOs that have came off of Carta and the missed revenue opportunities like is huge. And, I always believed that Carta could be $100 billion company. I still believe it. But that was one way that it would have been possible. And we missed and we failed. And, the whole vision in the beginning was we're going to create a stock market for private companies. And that shifted around. And we also tried to do that. That was Carta X. But, it was like, okay, well, if we're not going to create a stock market for private companies, let's just take them public. Because that's when the wealth is created. That's where the biggest opportunity is to make an impact on people's lives, but also the biggest opportunity to monetize, right? Especially when Carta raised $1 billion. Like you gotta have really big revenue targets. And where can we make the most money? When our customers make the most money. And otherwise it's just a leaky bucket. You'd lose customers when they create the most value. When they make their money, you're not even capturing them anymore. You'd lose them. And so it was a big opportunity, and we failed to execute. And I own a lot of that. I think we did a really good job with that team, but I have a tendency to, to have tunnel vision sometimes, and I pushed it too far. My head of product was telling me we weren't ready, and I was giving a different message to the CEO and the board members. And this worked for me a lot of times previously. Like you
Right.
push it through and you make it work.
Totally.
And you stay up until midnight every night and you make it work.
Yeah.
But we were just so far from being able to support this one.
Yeah. Again, it's kind of like that vision bordering on delusion. It's like 9 times out of 10, you hit it. And then like that 10th time, it's like, okay,
Yeah,
probably should have listened.
it was
But yeah.
it was a huge problem. And,
Yeah.
like I said, most importantly, it lost our CEO's faith in us as a team. He disbanded the team, and Carter never got into the public markets.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate, but it's a really good lesson for me, especially now because we're in another heavily regulated industry. And if we mess up, like there's big, major issues. And I think that was like one of the biggest reasons, like my underlying like message was like, okay, we're not going to do this with Dynasty.
Yeah.
Like we did it last time. It's the same team. My head of product is my head of product now. He was head of product for that business as well.
Yeah.
And so now, he will never, especially with we're completely in charge. Like, no, our product, it took 3 years to release it. We might have had the opposite problem this time. We took 3 years to launch it, but here we are.
Yeah. And it sounds like, like you've really kind of carried that lesson with you, right? Like if you have, and so I'm curious, like, are you tempted ever like to close a big deal when the product's not truly ready yet? Or do you feel like that's something that you have like a much like harder look at, just, knowing what you've already experienced?
Yeah, it definitely happened in this company already where we had some billionaires and wanted to create trust with us. And, this was before when we were doing everything, and we did it. And we support them now. And, we're their trustee. And I actually tried to get out of that one. And I told them, I was like, hey, we're not, this isn't normal business for us. Like, you really should be working with and they were like, don't worry about it. We have we have our family office reviewing everything. They're like, we just want to work with you because we like tech companies. And so we support them, and everything went good and everything's fine. But now that won't happen anymore because we only work with founders and founder stock now. So like, there's no founder that we can't work with. Like if it's founder stock, we have this airtight package And if there needs to be additional planning when it comes to like the tax side, we rope in our Morgan Stanley private wealth. We rope in our CPA partner, maybe an attorney partner as well. We bring the whole family office infrastructure. We still serve as the trustee. That's the business that we actually want. But so like we're not in position to sell ahead anymore. Like we only have one customer type that we work with and we know it very well.
And then, yeah, switching gears again, like what did Carta get right about scaling culture and product that you've brought into Dynasty?
Yeah, Carta did a lot right in the early days. Culture, we had a cult. It was literally a cult. We were all bought in. I don't know, like what I mean. It's just Henry just had a really effective way of selling the vision of the company, and we were super close. And we had to be in person. Didn't matter if we lived in San Francisco. We had to commute down to Mountain View, and we did camping trips. We did like whitewater rafting. Like we did a lot. Like a lot as a small company, and the camping trips are great. Like I hope to bring that back to Dynasty. We're still small, but could probably do it. But yeah, we did. I think culturally, like we all, you have to really have a clear mission. I think that was the biggest takeaway that I have from that is you have to have a clear mission for everybody to be like obsessed with. And the second part is you have to like motivate them to like, or you have to hire the right people that are mission driven towards your mission. And one thing that we did was weird, but in the beginning we didn't have a lot, and we're actually doing it now again, but we couldn't afford to pay top dollar. Is for Carta, we did this probably until now. We always everybody we hired is like, look, we're not going to pay the best. If you're looking for money, go work at Salesforce or Google or wherever. If you're looking to build a really big company that makes a big impact and have large upside connected to that with stock, this is the company for you. We tell them straight up, we're not going to pay the best, not even close. We're going to pay on the bottom end. And that attracted the right people. Like I think the people that were just looking for money would self-select out, and the people that really believed in our mission, like me telling them that we're not going to pay the best at all and we're not going to negotiate. Henry has this whole blog post on like how to hire, and he says we don't negotiate. We do the same thing now. He actually did the same thing with me when he hired me, because he gave me a terrible offer and he knew I was going to accept already. And I tried to negotiate and he said, we don't negotiate. Here's why. I made you the best offer I'm willing to pay you. If I were to negotiate with you, you would wonder, maybe I could have got more. At this point, no, this is the best. This is my best. This is my walk away price. Now you know that you can trust me going forward. I joined, and we do that at Dynasty now, and I did it at Carta with hundreds of people that I hired, and it worked. The right people opt in for that type of environment, and it built really, really good culture.
That's so cool. Yeah. I like how it's just straightforward, probably wastes a lot less time as well in the process, because you're not waiting for a week for them to come back with a number and then you to think about it, quote unquote, and then get back to them. It's a whole dance. And sometimes you just want to, like, both parties know where they're kind of willing to land, and it's better to just cut to the chase. So
Henry also believes that like negotiations were unfair because only certain type of people always negotiate and certain people never did.
Yeah. And some are really good at it naturally, and then others try and they're just not. So
yeah. It does like level the play, like the playing ground essentially on that. So yeah. So then conversely, is there anything like from Carta that you've intentionally like not applied to Dynasty, or anything that you're like, hey, we're doing this differently?
That's a good question. At Carta, we didn't have good data for how people should be compensated, not on the cash side specifically, but more on the equity side. And, a lot of the early employees believed that they were severely undercompensated from an equity perspective. And so one of the products I launched at Carta towards the end of my 8 years there was a compensation tool. The Carta total compensation. And all the Carta data, all the equity data, created benchmarks. And we, from day one, were like, we're going to use that and we're going to show people the data and show them where we're compensating them. So building trust immediately. So Carta didn't have the ability to do that in the beginning because the tool didn't exist. But I think that was a lesson of like, you want to build trust and not make people feel like they're getting ripped off later. Like show them how you're coming up with the decision to pay them, and you're using data and you're intentionally paying them this percentile reflective against everybody else in the same position at the same size company in the same location. I think that's huge. Like we use that every time we hire somebody now. I pull it up, I show them, here it is, here's your role, here's where we're going to pay you.
Yeah.
No negotiations. No negotiations.
No, but it's so good because I think like, people just need to understand the process. Like when it seems super opaque,
Which is is
It
usually.
just feels a lot more, like, sketchy, like, you're just
Yeah.
if especially if you don't know what's happening, and once you know the process, at least you can say, "Hey, I don't agree with the process, but at least I know what it is," right? Like,
Yeah.
and then you make your decision from there.
Yeah. Exactly. And then, as a former first sales hire turned VP of sales who managed hundreds of people in your time at Carta, what's your take now on the right time to make that first sales hire?
When we are when we are consistently, it's right about now. When we are consistently doing over $50,000 a month in new ARR, is that based on my experience of building a sales team, $50,000 a month is a good quota. $600,000 a year. Give them a total compensation that's 20 to 25% of that. The numbers work. You can build a scalable sales team like around $50,000 a month in quota, and just about where we're at right now. That's
It's
why I
awesome.
recently made a post about looking for a salesperson.
Yeah, that's awesome and helpful for you to share too, because I think a lot of times, like founders get pressure from investors, like founder-led sales, founders-led sales, founder-led sales, and we definitely believe in founder-led sales because it's the best way to get quick feedback from customers and implement it directly into the product. And as a CEO, you can hop onto calls a lot faster and get calls with people a lot faster than someone that works for you because people see it in your title on LinkedIn. They're like, "Whoa, the CEO or the founder's reaching out to me." But there comes a time where things are breaking and there's other things you need to focus on. And it's helpful to know where you see that switch as being kind of worth it.
Yeah, when I can effectively be a salesperson with the quota and carry my own bag, like that's when I can replicate it. And until I get to if I'm not at the point where I can generate consistently $50,000 a month in revenue, then we haven't found product market fit yet. And if we
Yep,
haven't found, I'm not going to outsource that. I have to do that.
totally.
Yeah.
Yep,
I love the perspective of, like, yeah, it has to be once you get to that product market fit aspect.
Yeah, and the product market fit definitions, there's so many different definitions. I like the one from Mark and Treason where when the customers are ripping the product out of your hands. But to me, it's like when the numbers work, the unit economics work for me to be a sales rep. Like when I'm able to be a commissioned sales rep myself based on the revenue I'm generating, then I'll replicate that.
Yeah. Spoken like a true sales turned founder. So love it. So yeah, so curious too, like, is there a time when you made a decision at Dynasty that felt risky at the time, but actually ended up paying off?
We became a licensed trust company. It cost a couple $1,000,000. A lot of investors didn't want us to do it because it's highly regulated. It takes a long time. And they were like, "You're too small to be thinking about that." But by doing that, it gives us a huge regulatory moat. Nobody else can do what we're doing unless they have that trust company license, which is a lot of money goes into doing it, a lot of time and a lot of work. And so it was risky because investors were like, "That's a services business. Why?" But nope, there's no venture funded licensed trust companies. We're the first. But now that we have it, it's enabled this new product, which is flying off the shelf. And it's the first real time we've had product market fit in 3 years. And it's like, reminds me of 2015 Carta all over again. The amount of interest that I'm getting from so many partners and so many customers. And like when I'm back to back to back to back, I had to change my sales calls to 15 minutes instead of 30 minutes to fit more in. And then I had to change it back because I'm like, I can't get this done in 15 minutes. It's like more complex. So like I have people that are like getting upset because they can't get on the phone with me for 2 weeks because my schedule's packed. Like that's a good feel, but it's all enabled by this trust company license. So very
awesome.
happy that another investor convinced me to do it, and all the credit goes to him.
That's so cool. I love that you're going after the complex problem first. Like Rachel and I were actually just talking about that earlier this week with another founder. But it feels like right now, especially in the age of AI, it is so hard to have defensibility. It's hard to build a moat. It's hard to show how you're different. Everybody can like build something easy on top of something else. But when you really go for these, regulatory challenges and big complex problems that most people don't want to solve, that's where the real opportunity is at. So that's super cool that you decided to take the risk and do it.
Yeah, it's a good time. Go after the hard problems.
Yeah. So with that, we'll transition to rapid fire questions. So we've just got a few, and you can say whatever comes to your mind first. But they're designed to be pretty quick. So Rachel, I'll let you kick off.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you think is the most underrated skill for a founder?
Compassion. I think a lot of founders are like, tend to be very cutthroat. And I think that if you want people to follow you into the fire, like you got to have compassion and you got to care about them. And if you want them to care about you, that you need to care about them. So not a lot of people talk about that. And there's a lot of cutthroat founders out there, but I think compassion is very important.
Answer.
And what's a book or concept that's stayed with you?
How to Win Friends and Influence People, another book that
Nice.
Henry made me read.
I think I have that sitting on my shelf. I should read it.
Yeah. And it's just, the core takeaway from that book that I got was be a good person, speak in terms of the other person's interest, not your own. Like, just do the right thing. If you're speak in terms of the other person's interest, like, and you show them that like you're on their side, like you're going to be able to influence them better. Just be a good person. If you want, you want to influence people, be a good person.
Be genuine.
And then last one, what's a piece of startup advice that you think is total BS?
I think there's like this, there's a lot of people that are like, you need to test and measure every single thing you do. I think we try to do a lot of that and we're like, you know what, like we're way too early. Like there's some things you just have to go with your gut on. There's some things you just have to go with your gut on. I think that if you can test and measure all day, every day, and still never find product market fit. And so it's just, you can just create a lot of busy work for yourself. And so I don't think that's the answer for product market fit. I think there's a lot more art than science when it comes to product market fit. And I think enough people give credit to that.
Awesome. So we have one last question that we ask every founder that comes through here. So if you had a magic wand, imagine you get 3 wishes. What's one thing that you would fix for founders, for yourself, and then for sort of the industry at large, which you're operating in?
One thing that I would fix is California's recognition of QSBS. It's like one of 5 states.
There's so many companies here.
So many, all the companies are here. All the companies are, and New York recognizes QSBS.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It's like California is going to punish tech companies for being there here because everybody wants to be here. It's like ridiculous. Like that's one thing that I would fix for all of tech. Absolutely. It makes no sense. It speaks to California just not caring about us.
Mm-hmm.
Like we all live here. We all want to, it's a beautiful place to be, but like, come on, one of 5 states.
Yeah. Especially when we're so entrepreneurial.
It makes no sense. It makes no sense at all. We're like, it's like being cocky, it's like, that would be the one thing that I could think of.
That's awesome. And then what about something for you personally?
One thing I would
wish for yourself. Yeah.
Wish for myself. I love being a founder, but I love being a father even more. And I wish that as this company progresses, that I can actually be more present instead of less present. Like that's like my biggest challenge is like, it's, working hard on the company and the sleepless nights and like it steals from my young children. And the fear that I have is that the more successful we become, the worse it's going to get. But my wish is that it's the opposite and the easier it's going to get.
Yeah. I truly believe with good leadership skills, like you can grow your team and manage your team in a way that allows you to have a life outside of work. Obviously you grind for those first few years and first 5 years. It's always going to be a lot of hard work. But, I've seen people that have both and I think it's possible. But it kind of comes back to even what you were mentioning before, which is like being a compassionate leader. I think people want to work hard for people like that. So, and they probably want similar things to you as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool.
Awesome. Well, Alessandro, what's the best way for founders to get in touch with you? And is there anything that you would like to shamelessly plug?
No, just best way to get a hold of me, probably LinkedIn. I'm more active there than anywhere else at this point. Twitter does not work for me at all.
I'm in the same boat recently. Last year I was on fire. This year, not so much. So
yeah, it's tough. So LinkedIn, probably best way to get a hold of me and check us out. Plug just Dynasty. Check us out, getdynasty.com. If you're a founder, if you're an angel investor, check us out.
Yeah. And fun fact, I was an early customer of Dynasty too, even pre-pivots, but I'm excited about this new pivot too. So super exciting. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show. And that's it.
Thanks Alessandro. Really great to have you on. It was so nice to have Alessandro on, especially after we hosted a webinar with him. I'm curious, Amber, what stood out to you from this conversation?
Yeah, a few things. I've been following his journey for years. And it's funny, we were joking with him after the recording earlier that he feels like an extension of our team this past week because of that webinar that we did too. So, but we hadn't dug in with him in this way before. So it was really cool to hear how he thinks about company building. And I liked how he talked a lot about focusing in on one problem, one persona. And I think a lot of founders think they're getting specific because they get that advice. And then they try to go after that. They realize it's too big of a focus area. They get a little bit more specific. And that's when things really take off. So it seems like he had the same experience, and it's just a good reminder to everyone, like, get more specific, build something really tight for that market, and then have people clamoring after the thing that you're building for them because it's so specific to them. And then the other one that I really liked that came up was just his willingness to take the risk and get that license to create trusts in Nevada, which I didn't realize it costs like $2 million to do that. And I can understand why early stage investors would be like, do you want to spend 2 million if you only raised like 3 or something? I don't know how much he's raised, but if you've only raised 3 to 5 million, you really want to spend 2 of it on that. And so being able to take that risk, I think, has paid off a lot. And, at the council, we love complex spaces because there are so many people building easy things right now, and it's easy to build. And so it's just hard to stand out when it's really easy to replicate whatever you're building. So I think that's going to set him apart and give them a lot of escape velocity, even if someone else catches on to what they're doing and wants to do the same thing.
Yeah, totally. And I think speaking of like that focus on the customer too, and, being able to find that product market fit, I loved how he was been thinking about that as he transitions from founder led sales over to actually making his first sales hire. We talk a lot about this with founders of like, when is that right time? And I think spoken like a true salesperson, he thinks about it as, hey, do I have enough to actually make like the commission and have like, drive the revenue perspective for like the first sales hire. So yeah, I really love that he's been kind of focused in on that piece of it.
Yeah, it's funny because my brother has also been a first sales hire at a scaling tech startup. It didn't scale as big as Carta, but that was one of his biggest takeaways too, is like, it is so hard to be a first salesperson or even an executive of sales or, a person hired onto a sales team if there isn't product market fit. It's just an uphill battle. So even if you have downward momentum because your product is so good, that's when you really need salespeople to be able to take those calls, onboard people, teach them how the product works. So I thought that was really important for him to point out.
Yeah. Absolutely. We're going to link everything that Alessandro mentioned in the show notes. And if you want more first builders like this, tune in for our next guest.
Thanks for tuning in.